Right now, police are searching for missing Caylee Anthony, but today they were also searching for something else at Caylee's grandmother's house. I'm Jamie Colby. I'm in for Greta Van Susteren tonight. Good to have you with us. Earlier today, police collected 2 bags, and they were filled with evidence from Cindy Anthony's house. The big question, what were they looking for, and what did they find? Police earlier today speaking about the case.
There were some items that they felt that was of interest to the case. However, we're not going to be able to discuss as to exactly what was removed. But as you noticed, Mr. Anthony went with the detectives over there, and again, indicative of the cooperation that the family is having with us.
Was that the questioning that you had this morning that you decided to go there? And are there any more searches that will be around the Anthony's house that you're aware of at this time?
As the investigation goes on, anything that we need to do, we will do. If there's any more searches, then we will do that. But at this point, right now, I don't know that we have any more searches to be doing at their house.
The items were taken from inside the house itself or across the property?
I believe it was from outside the house, maybe somewhere in the back. Not exactly sure exactly where. During the conversation with the Anthonys, things do come up sometimes, and there was a need to go back there and retrieve these items. But again, Mr. Anthony was very cooperative, and as you know, like I said before, he was with us, and it was not a problem for us to go to the house.
The Anthony family did a research and found 9 different Zenaida Gonzalez's. Have you searched through all those?
Now, we were aware that there was quite a few. As a matter of fact, early on, that's one of the things we talked about. People came to realize that the name Zenaida is not as unusual as some people thought, and that we did start talking to quite a few Zenaidas. And like I said before, we spoke to a Zenaida. We just haven't been able to see, locate, and speak to the Zenaida.
What about the issue of immunity? I mean, has there been any situation with the attorneys, the discussions between your department and them to try to get information on the board about immunity?
We would not be in a position to offer immunity. That's something that would have to be with the state attorney's office. I know that when the detectives did try to speak to her, there were some conditions that the lawyer wanted, and of course he's doing his job. He's looking out for the interests of his client, and so at that point we felt that nothing was going to come out of that conversation, so that's when we went ahead and just continued with our investigation. I don't know exactly what was said, and again, we're not in a position to offer immunity. That's something that the lawyer would have to sit down with the state attorney's office, and if he feels that there's a need for that, he would have to make that offer to the state attorney's office or that request.
That question of immunity is interesting. We're going to talk about that with the panel coming up. But first, what about this surprise search at Caylee's grandparents' house today? On the record, producer Steph Watts was on scene just as investigators arrived at the house. Steph joins me live now from Florida. Steph, what did you see?
Hey, good evening, Jamie. It was, you know, it's like when you're out here covering these stories, you wait and wait and wait, and you're waiting for something to happen. All of a sudden, in sweeps these teams of CSI crime scene investigators. They pulled up 2 sets of cars. They opened up the garage, went in through the garage, and retrieved items from the backyard. Now, we're not exactly clear what they got, Jamie, but from what we understand, they removed items from one of the sheds in the backyard. Now, these sheds, there's several sheds in the backyard, if you see from the video that we have. These sheds have been an area of interest because, remember, earlier on this week, we learned that there was a report from George Anthony of a break-in in the shed a couple weeks ago, and sorry, that was a couple weeks in June, and there was gas cans removed from the shed. So we're unclear what they got, but they did come out with several bags of items that they felt were of interest to them in the case.
So at a minimum, we know that they previously came, when there was an incident report, George Anthony reporting that Casey or someone had stolen gas cans full of gas from the shed. We also know, Steph, that they have taken soil samples, and they may have come to retrieve more of those. What's the connection, potentially, between soil samples at the house and, let's say, the car that they impounded of Casey's or any other evidence they might already have in their possession?
Well, from speaking to investigators, what I understand what they would be doing is they would be taking soil samples from the backyard and comparing it to soil samples they would pull from the car, from perhaps the shovel that they're testing as well, tire tracks in the car, mats in the car, in the back seat. What they can tell from soil samples is it's a very different type of soil in Florida that you would have in a swamp area, different types of plants, different types of soil, than would be in the backyard of a house like this that would be landscaped with, you know, the typical kind of soil that would be around a house. So there's a very big difference in those 2 types of soil, so that's what they would be looking for.
All right, remind our viewers about the shovel.
Sure. Casey borrowed a shovel. We don't know the date of it because the date has not been released, but she borrowed a shovel from a neighbor. No one's really talking about the shovel. The investigators aren't talking about it. All they've told me is it's a key piece of evidence, and it is being tested forensically at the lab along with the car.
Okay, let's
I guess
talk.
maybe the question is, well, go ahead, sorry.
Other than being in the right place at the right time when the investigators show up for this surprise search after meeting with the grandparents today, which is a really interesting development showing that the authorities are continuing to work with them and not Casey, you also went out and took a look at something else for us. But first, I want the viewers to listen closely to this phone call that Casey Anthony placed to her brother from jail. It contains an important clue.
Did you ever call the babysitter on your cell phone? Ever receive a call from the babysitter on your cell phone number?
I most definitely did.
Can you give me any day or anything whenever you think you may have received that?
Any specific day? God, a lot of the times it was through text messages, so I mean the number would show up even on that.
Okay.
I can't think of any specifics. I mean my days are all thrown together. I at least know what the day is today, but as far as stuff from the last couple months, I have no exact, time or date if I can think of something.
Do you remember an area code?
The last number that she had called me from was a 954 number, which was a Fort Lauderdale number.
Would she have been programmed in your cell phone?
She was programmed into that other phone that we need to find a way to recover. I mean, I don't know.
Help me with that, actually. You said that you referred to it as your blackjack?
Yeah, it was a blackjack. I'd only had it for probably a week and a half. It didn't keep its charge, so that's why I started using that other phone.
How should I go about finding your phone?
I don't know. That's the thing. I mean, I knew specifically where it was. I mean, my last recollection of me having it was at Universal, but I knew that I had also been at J. Blanchard Park, and I could have potentially had it there with me, too.
And J. Blanchard Park is exactly where our producer, Steph Watts, went today. Take a look.
We're here in Blanchard Park in the middle of Orlando. This park is about 15 minutes from Casey Anthony's home. And the reason we're here is because Casey Anthony, in a phone conversation from jail with her brother, Lee Anthony, Lee was questioning her about a cell phone she had mentioned she had, and they were trying to locate this cell phone. In that conversation, she said she had come to this park with some friends and believes this is where she lost the cell phone. We would hope that investigators came here to check it out, maybe not just for the cell phone, but for any signs. Maybe perhaps she bought little Caylee here. Now, if the name of the park sounds familiar, it's because June 10th of this year, another young woman, her name was Nicole Ganguza, was murdered here. She went jogging, and her body was discovered the next day. The killer's never been found.
Now, we're not saying there's any connection necessarily between the two cases, but boy, it sure is interesting, Steph, that this park was the location of a murder investigation previously, and now Casey brings it up in this phone conversation with her brother about her phone. What else do you read into that conversation with the brother? It's so interesting. His questions really did seem prepared by investigators.
Yeah, it must be really frustrating for this family. And what I think was really interesting today as well, Jamie, is when you see the CSI show up, crime scene investigators, you know that they're investigating this as a crime, although they won't come out and say that. This is the second visit by CSI. So I think it's starting to set into the family that perhaps what their daughter or their sister has been telling them may not be the truth. And I think they're really trying to dig and do their own investigation and find out where Caylee is.
They were busy today not only talking to investigators helping with this search, but we have more information about what Casey's family was up to today. That is coming up ahead. Steph, thanks so much.